Well, it's great to be back. Welcome back to Stocks and Beers with Rich. I think this is our 5th or 6th episode. I don't know. Counting the beers, who knows? I'm the editor at Under the Radar Report, and I sincerely hope you're all doing well. Interesting times. And today's beer, or this week's beer, once again comes from the Sean Simmons Whitelakes stable. Fresh from WA. It's summer weather here in Sydney. So let's give this summer beer, summer ale a go. Let's give it a crack. See how it stands up to his last dark ale. Light and shade, we all need optimism. Here's hoping to a good summer. Once again, bit of dribble never goes astray. But it's not bad actually. Refreshing. Look, I just hope we're all celebrating it summer, that's for sure. And celebrations this week must go to BHP. Somewhat not bad, that beer actually. It's quite an even tempered beer. Last week was a bit dark and stormy. I feel this one's a bit light. So it puts me in the mood to talk BHP because the stock is on everyone's lips. The big Australian. I mean, this company generated one of its biggest profits ever, $17 billion in 2021. But this was overshadowed by a deal which was probably bigger in its decision to spin off its oil and gas assets to Woodside Petroleum, which gives BHP shareholders a standalone oil and gas exposure because they get in-specie distribution. It's a big deal, but it's so much more. It's so much more than just about that deal because it talks about investing. The big Australian has always been more than just the big Australian. Well, how can you be bigger than that really? But anyway, the first point that I'd like to make is, in relation to this, is that you don't have to drink KB, VB, Tooheys New anymore. We all know that. We all know growing up, well, those of us of, 40 plus vintage, we all know growing up, those were your staples. KB, VB, Tooheys New. Now you can go and get these craft beers. You can get these summer ales. You can get these from White Bays, Whitelakes, and there are even places, brewing companies whose names don't begin with white. But similarly in the market, it's more diversified than it's ever been, the ASX. There's technology, there's medtech, there's new media, there's old media, there's new sectors emerging that have never been here before, like lithium. There's BNPL. It doesn't stop. It's exciting. I can go on, and you can literally get drunk on the number of companies that have come forth and excited investors. And that's what BHP's deal is really about, because it's getting rid of energy. Investors have been pressuring it for a long time to get rid of energy, because it's like 7% of its earnings. It's nothing. If they want energy exposure, they go to an oil search, they go to a Santos, which are merging. And what it does for BHP is it focuses the group on the future, what it calls like future-facing commodities, things that go into producing batteries and fertilizer. So potash for the latter and nickel and copper for the former. Lastly, and there's always a lastly, even though I'll probably come up with some more points, it showcases how important the balance sheet is. Balance sheet, people, let's toasting the balance sheet, which in the case of beer is a brewery. How can I make that leap? Well, if you don't have a strong brewery, you can't produce much beer. Worse, you'll be relying on the banks to produce your beer. And we all know how much bankers love to drink. They'll suck you dry. So that's what one of Under the Radar's big criteria for companies is. It's the foundations, and one of those foundations is the balance sheet. But it's not all companies have this. We understand. We're lateral-minded here at Under the Radar. If they don't, they need to raise capital. And how do you raise capital? Well, you need to be showing that you're growing quickly. That gives you the best chance of raising capital without diluting your shareholder base. So growth is very important. And the key, which I guess I'm leading to in terms of building a portfolio is diversification. This has been the big learning, not just of beer drinkers, because it's why we like drinking so many beers. It's also producing a lot of different ideas that can generate a portfolio that contribute in many different ways. So at Under the Radar, we do this by tasting a lot of beers. It's called Sacrifice. And in this week's issue, here's to Sacrifice. In this week's issue, we showcase a tasting of 11 new stocks that subscribers sent in. These are really interesting companies that got us really excited. They're fascinating. In companies as diverse as gold exploration in Canada, to online education, to lithium producing technology. The online education was particularly interesting for me, considering the homeschooling that I've been enduring. I mean, who would have ever thought there's some solutions on the ASX to our parental dilemmas? But what we're talking about here is building a watch list, which you can't go past when there's so much change. You really need to build yourself a watch list just so you can get comfortable with the many different names that we're going to throw at you. And in some cases, we go beyond, the watch list stage, and that's when we start tipping companies. So let's go through a couple of them. And that one of those companies is that other company that's going back to its core earnings. It hasn't been mentioned beside BHP outside of this video. AVA Risk. I mentioned it last week. So anyway, you know how I said that they had this team of Jason Statham's transporting packages around the world, which is increasingly valuable to the company. Well, they've sold that. They've sold it for basically 40 million, equivalent of 40 million Australian. So now they've got 60 million of cash. So this is an even bigger, arguably this is even a bigger deal for AVA Risk than BHP's, spin-off of its energy division. Why is that? Because now, like AVA Risk, whose market cap's like about 90 million, has 60 million in cash. And it's got to focus on its core perimeter security technology, Aura IQ, in the mining space. It's been promising a contract for God knows how long. Well, they now, management is signalling that they're confident of delivering. So here's the one to watch out for. Another one we like, that we've liked, but for a longer period of time, is Alliance Aviation. Now this company was just ignored by a lot of people. Initially it had a good takeoff, but then it got ignored. It's a FIFO. It started out as a FIFO specialist, so that produces good income. But when the commodities hit the skids after the financial crisis, suddenly people just avoided the company, and that's when we thought it was an interesting company, especially when they did this deal to buy 30 or so Fokkers. These are sort of tough planes that can endure the kind of arid conditions of Australia. And so they bought them from the Austrians, and it's been one of the best deals the company's ever made. Now they've bought 32 Embraers, I think they're called. So we'll see what happens there. But we picked up this stock cheaply, so we're looking for another chance to pick it up again. If you don't own it, it's definitely worth putting on your watch list. Money 3. Well, there's a company. I mean, this was in payday lending, and it transformed itself into being an automotive lender. So it went from 0% of the market to 1% of the market to 2% of the market, and now it's branching out a bit. It's got some operations in New Zealand that's been successful, and it's going sort of down the risk curve. But basically, this company's been a big winner, but it's never faced a big credit crisis. And so there is risk involved. We're talking about, subprime lending risk. So although we like the company, these are the kind of issues you need to be aware of. Well, what's coming up? All I can say is it's going to be like happy hour every week. The number of stocks we've got coming down the line for subscribers. I'm talking 15 stocks a week for the next few weeks, and that's just small caps alone. In the blue chip this week, we're covering in-depth 10 companies, including BHP. There's bound to be loads of opportunities, because there always are when you're hunting in this small cap world. And sure enough, there's lots more beers to try. So here's to summer ale, and here's to some optimism for the future. Richard Hemming signing off for another week.